Hey y'all, it's me, and I am at the cemetery on this beautiful, 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 beautiful spring day. Just look at this. My car thermometer said it was about 68 degrees, and I'm just going to walk around up here slowly today. I'm just not in the mood to try to keep up with the number of trips around. I'll just enjoy the journey today. But a couple of things. I'm carrying this right now. I'm carrying my phone on my selfie stick, and I'm going to change it out about halfway through to this little harness. And I used this harness a couple weeks ago, if you remember, when I was working in my garden. And really, honestly, it's not going to work for me in that venue. I thought that maybe it would, help everybody see what's going on much easier and to keep my hands free. But when I work in the garden, I guess I'm just going to have to just use my little tripod. But I'm hoping that walking, we can determine if the selfie stick doesn't work any better than this little harness. I'll use the harness because it'll just be easier, and I can swing both arms when I walk. It'll just relieve my arms. I won't have to carry around the selfie stick. But that's kind of my goal. So halfway through, we'll take a moment and switch it out and see how it does. I hadn't been up here in, goodness, I'm not even certain when the last time was. And so I actually sent Hugh and Aaron about a week and a half ago up with the flowers for the gravestone. So today is the first day that I had actually seen them. And it was fun. It was funny because when I got here, they had done a fine job. There was nothing wrong other than they had turned the ribbon to the back, which I guess to them this side looked like it should be the front. And wow, look at those big guys. They actually cast a shadow, big shadow down here on the cemetery. So I had to take a moment, just turn the the flowers around to the front. And what was so funny is that they, when you put flowers in a vase like this, you have to kind of spread them apart so they're not all just stuck in one direction. And I did. But anyway, other than that, they did a good job. I love my boys. I'm telling you, girls, we need to make them be involved in keeping these graves dressed maybe a little bit more. Some of our guys may do that more than others, but I know in our family that it's just always been kind of up to the women in the family to dress the graves. So there you go. All right, now I want to just start off by saying you all are so wonderful and so precious to me. And thank you so very, very, very much for just all the condolences and all the sweet comments last week when our Mika had to leave us. And yeah, it was a hard week. Hard on us, and necessary for her. She was such a precious, precious little dog. Well, big dog, actually. A little Anatolian Shepherd. I'm going to see if I can get a photograph of her to upload in the comments, just so y'all can see her. And the photograph I had, she's probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years younger than she was when she passed. And she had mud on her nose. But she's such a beautiful girl. And yes, I miss her. But Aiden's doing well. He also realized that it was just her time, that her little body had gotten to the point that it was frail. Her legs shook when she was standing up. She would fall sometimes. Sometimes she had to have help actually getting up. And she, you know, couldn't control her bowels any longer. And she's just such a stately dog. I just felt like that was a horrible thing for her. I didn't mind cleaning it up. It's just, you know, it's what we do for people we love. But when it became apparent that her life was just harder on her than it was enjoyable, then it was time to let her go. But anyway, the odd thing is that when Aaron first moved here, of his two older dogs, you know, he has Bodie, the golden retriever. I thought that Bodie would have been the first because he was so frail, so fragile. And instead of going downhill, he has actually improved considerably. And Bodie is funny. He is so funny. I have trained him to know that if he goes outside and does his thing, which he hated to go outside, but he knows that if he goes outside and does his thing, that when he comes back in, I will stand and pet him for about 5 minutes. And he loves that. So now, almost every time that I put the other dogs out, Bodie jumps up and he runs outside with them. But when he comes back in, you better be prepared to stand there and pet him for 5 minutes, because he's not going to let you do otherwise. He will lean against you. And he's a big guy. I mean, he's a really big golden. I would say he is maybe 90 to 100 pounds. He's the biggest of all our dogs. And so when he leans against you, you better just plan on standing there and petting him. And so I think it's amusing. And he is a darling. But he has improved so much over the past few months that I don't see anything happening with him for a good while, I hope. We enjoy him, and he's just a sweetheart. But anyway, but again, I just wanted to tell y'all that you're precious to me, and I appreciate all of those comments and condolences and just acts of love, and it's very, very appreciated. All right, now look, we have some teeny tiny little daffodils blooming here. How sweet. And we're beginning, I think, to get some new growth on this little vine that we've all been wondering about for the last year, or well, however long. But I am beginning to think that y'all were right when you thought that perhaps it was a clematis. Some kind of a clematis. That looks like a clematis leaf to me. So I can't wait until it will just hurry up and give us some little blooms. And then we can find out for certain. That's pretty. All right. When I switch this camera over to this thing I'm wearing on my chest, I think it will give us a chance, if I wear both of them a bit while we're walking, it'll give us a chance to compare them on the same day, under the same conditions, the same bit of breeze, so we'll know, you know, which one works better. And so instead of switching them or wearing them on 2 different days, I think that'll give us a chance to compare them apples to apples. Look at this, guys. Look at that little bit of breeze. The flag's just barely moving. And it feels so amazing out here. What a beautiful... See, this is how I would love summer to be all the time. About between 65 and 75 degrees is perfect. We're usually up closer to 90. And I know for some of y'all, you're thinking, yeah, well, that must be nice. But, and the humidity's not too bad here, usually. Now, I grew up in Michigan. I've told y'all this before. But people that are not from Michigan or from those states surrounding the Great Lakes, they don't realize how humid that area is. I've been to Florida just a couple of times, and I can tell you that as far as the weather, other than the very cold winters, the summers are pretty similar to Florida. We had off times, 95% humidity, 95-degree days, and it didn't cool off at night like it does here. And it was miserable. Michigan can truly be a very, very miserable state in the summer. And when I was a kid, and when I grew up, I've told y'all, my parents didn't farm. I grew up in town. But my daddy had grown up. They farmed a little bit, but my granddad was a logger. And so my daddy was helping my granddad log from the time he was like 8 years old. So if you can imagine that. I think us as parents now can't even imagine having a child out working that kind of labor at that age. But back then it was, it was a matter of life and death. But my daddy loved gardening. And so when I was a young teenager, he purchased a little farm down in Carlton, Michigan. If any of you know Monroe, Carlton, that area. And it's a pretty, or at least the farm that he bought was kind of swampy in the back. The front of it wasn't. But the only thing he really wanted to do was just have a really big garden. And my daddy had his own business laying brick and block and pouring concrete, and that's what he would do in the morning hours. And then in the evening he worked afternoon shift at Ford Motor Company. So there was about a 3-hour block between when he would stop for the day with his own personal business and when he would go back to work at Ford. I'm breathing a little heavy, guys, and I'm walking slow. This is going to take me a while to get my energy back after the COVID. But anyway, we would go down just probably every couple of weeks. We would go down to this little farm, about a 20-minute drive from where we live. So we wouldn't go and spend more than an hour and a half or so there. But we'd go every couple of weeks just to kind of hoe the weeds out, which there was a plethora of weeds. There were more weeds, it seemed like, than garden vegetables. But the really horrible thing was the mosquitoes in Michigan are that big. They are almost microscopic. They're so tiny. But when they bite you, you feel like you've been bitten by a bumblebee or hornet or something much bigger and more powerful. And the horse flies are that big. And they could practically pick you up and carry you away. So with this area, with this little farm, having kind of a real swampy area in the background, in the back of it, we had plenty of tiny little mosquitoes and big, huge horseflies. Never thought a bit about putting on any kind of sunscreen or sunblock. That was back before that day. So when we would finish there and we would leave, I would be covered in welts from the mosquito bites, the horsefly bites, and I would be sunburned out the wazoo. I grew up hating gardening. I despised it with everything in me. I thought, why would anybody do this on purpose? Oh, it's so funny to me now thinking back, but that was my vision. That was my only experience with farming. So, needless to say, when I married Hugh and his mom and daddy grew these huge gardens, I thought, oh, what have I done? What have I done? This is going to be horrible. But I was surprised when it was tolerable. Now, I can't say that I really enjoyed growing tobacco or gardening in the massive way that Hugh's mom and dad gardened. But I started getting used to it, excuse me. And eventually, and I'm saying eventually, it was a long while before I actually started to kind of enjoy it. And now, at this point in my life, I love gardening. And I don't really know where it came from or how it developed. But when I talk to young women and they say, you can keep anything alive, you just have that gift. I said, no, if you don't have it now, wait until you're 50, because that's when it happens. I don't know what happened, but somewhere, my mother she had a green thumb like you wouldn't believe. She could keep anything alive, and I've told y'all this story. But I mean, I had nieces and nephews that would bring her houseplants that were dead or dying, and she would work her miracle on them, and they would come pick them up in a couple weeks, and they would be beautiful and thriving. I'd take her to Lowe's, and she would head straight back in the gardening department where the little plants are on sale for 25 cents because they're dead, basically. And she'd buy a buggy load of them, and we'd take them home, and she'd nurse them back to health, and they would be more beautiful than the freshest plants up front at Lowe's. And I would tell her, I said, Mom, you know, we could have a little yard sale type thing once a week or once a month if you want to. That'd give you a little mad money. If you love doing this so much, I mean, she'd give them away, which was fine. That was where her joy was. She enjoyed making them beautiful and then giving them away. But she could have easily ran a little nursery herself. But when I would bring a houseplant home, which I loved houseplants, I just wasn't very good with them. I could walk in the door with one, and he would look at it and he'd say, ah, another victim. And that was truly the case, unfortunately. My houseplants were usually victims. But I had one that I kept alive for 30 years. My kids called it the science experiment. And it's a philodendron. If anybody needs a house plant that will come back from dead multiple times, it would be a philodendron. So there you go. But those of you who are out there and do not have the ability to garden the way that you want to, believe me, it'll come. If you want it badly enough, it'll come. But around the time of my 50th year, I suddenly found I couldn't really kill anything. I had become my mother, and I was able to keep things alive, and it's really kind of a good thing, because my mom was 31 when I was born, and so she was about 80 at that time, 81, and she was reaching the point where she was struggling to be able to take care of her plants. And so let me take this off of here, guys. I'm going to put it on this little thing, and let me see. I'm going to have to zero you in, so give me just a minute. All right. All right. I don't want to point you toward the ground, so we'll try that, and hopefully I've got it zeroed in well. That's the problem with it, is that I can't really see where it's pointed. But anyway, let me close my car door so this little person can get past me, and I'm going to head back the other direction. How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Did I leave you enough room to get past me?
I will get through there.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
All right, let's see what happens with this. I think I need to tilt you down just a little bit. Not too much. All right, let's try that. Okay. And hopefully I'm not bouncing you. That's my goal, is just have a nice smooth walk. This day is just so beautiful. So beautiful. And you know, some of y'all have talked about you miss gardening. I hope that you can find someone that might help you just to construct, if you have a space, just to construct a couple of raised beds. They don't have to be anything elaborate, but just something that, you know, will lift the level up a couple of feet so that you have the ability to reach easily. Even if you're in a wheelchair, or you use a walker, if you can lock it and sit down and just reach in. So they need to be accessible from both sides and not too wide, so you can reach all the way to the center. We tried to accommodate my mom's failing ability to walk. She was in a wheelchair at the last, but at one point we had a big porch with a big circular angle on it, and Hugh built like a porch railing that was 3 levels, and then we had like little shelves that would attach to the levels, pointed out in different areas, different directions, so that they weren't shading each other. And she just had lots and lots of potted plants, everything from vegetables to flowers. And I think at one point I counted about 100 little pots on that wall, all different sizes. And she loved it. She spent the bulk of her day out there. She'd sit in the shade part of the day, and then she'd go over and she'd pick off some dead blooms. And she'd water a little bit, and she'd just do everything she could to take care. They were beautiful. People would stop at our house. We lived on a fairly busy little street, but people would stop and just roll their window down and say, "That is so beautiful. I love passing your house so much." And that made her day. There was nothing she enjoyed more than having people compliment her flowers. They were her children. Like my doggies are mine. My mom's flowers were her children. And it was pretty funny. But, you know, there's all kinds of possibilities out there. What I would encourage you to do is go on Pinterest and look at the ideas that they might give you for patio gardening and just different things like that, depending on the space you have. And just con somebody, a neighbor or a family member or somebody, into helping you just get it set up. And then just enjoy being outside and digging in the dirt a little bit. It just hurts my heart for somebody that is a gardener at heart not to be able to just enjoy that experience, because it is precious. It is absolutely precious. Something that I think has brought me great peace over time. And maybe that's the reason I enjoy it so much, just being outside. If I couldn't be in a garden, I guess I would be outside in a lawn chair, a rocking chair or something, just sitting there and listening to the birds and watching the seasons pass, because there's nothing more beautiful, more precious than the earth we live on. But y'all, I think I'm finished for now. I'm gonna head home. I gotta go feed my critters. That takes a lot of time when you have as many critters as we do. It takes quite a bit of time. So I shall go do that today, and we'll compare the other trips around with this last trip around, and see how they compare. Okay, you can let me know what you think. I love you all, and you are precious to me. The Facebook page has gotten totally put to the side. I'd forgotten about it, just honestly. So maybe if I can pull that back up and get it zeroed back in, we can start communicating with each other a little better. Some of you that send me emails, I'm bad about not responding to those, and it's basically just because I don't check my emails. I forget about them. And Hugh and I are seriously going to try to do a live, possibly this coming weekend. So any questions y'all want to ask us, if you'd like to have a I mean, of course, during the live we can answer questions, but it would really be helpful if y'all have an opportunity to just jot those questions down in the comments, and that way I can have the answers ready. I know some of y'all had asked about seeing wedding pictures or seeing pictures of us when we were young, so I will have those out, and it'll just be fun. It'll be a fun time. So I will put a blip up a day or two before, just to let y'all know when to expect it. Aaron, I have to be at home because he has to get us started, because I don't do the whole video thing. I forget how to do it. He has shown me, but I'd rather have him there just in case I've run into any issues. But again, you are loved, and I will talk to you soon. Be well and enjoy this beautiful, beautiful, oops, I guess I can just hit that button. This beautiful, beautiful spring day. Bye-bye.